Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. It's a pleasure to talk to you this afternoon. My name is Doug Brolls, and I am the Amenity Technical Sales Representative for Germinal Amenity, covering Scotland and the northeast of England. And I'm your compere, your host for today's webinar. Now, just to give you an overview, today we will be covering sustainable strategies for the golf course. I will shortly be handing you over to my colleague Graham Parker, followed by Alex Beesley, who are also Amenity Technical Sales Representatives for Germinal Amenity. Graham will be talking to you about managing golf courses with lower input methods. Alex will then talk about environmental pressures on golf courses and grass seed benefits. But let's start off where it all began. Germinal was founded in 1825 by Mr. Samuel McCausland in Belfast. The original building is just 500 yards from our group head office today. Last year we celebrated our 200-year anniversary. Germinal is still a sixth-generation family-run business, and Mr. Samuel McCausland is the great-great-great-great-grandfather of William Gilbert, our MD. We are very proud of our heritage. During our 200-year history, we have been a specialist seed company for 150 of those years. And our teams across Germinal businesses are extremely proud of the high levels of quality maintained in seed production, supply chain, staff knowledge, and the highest standards of customer service, providing seed into the agricultural and amenity markets. Now, I would now like to hand you over to my colleague Graham Parker, who will speak to you about golf courses with lower input methods. Graham, over to yourself.
Good day, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Graham Parker, Germinal Amenity's Technical Sales Advisor for Ireland, and I hope to share with you all today some useful information on sustainable strategies for golf courses. As Doug said, and I'm sure you will all agree, modern greenkeeping is focusing more and more on sustainable practices. So for my part, I'm going to concentrate on the physical inputs on the course and look at methods that greenkeepers can use to help reduce them and the potential benefits that can be attained from such. Now, golf courses today face a pivotal challenge, delivering exceptional playing conditions whilst minimizing their environmental impact. The solution lies in adopting smarter, sustainable practices that maintains quality without sacrificing it. Or to put it another way, reducing inputs and costs, enhancing resilience, and protecting the environment. Now, to give us some context as to what we're working with, this slide offers the approximate size and area for a typical golf course in Ireland and the UK. A golf course size very much depends on many factors, for example, age, style, location. But I hope you can see some similarities with your own golf course in these numbers. Golf courses face a combination of challenges: rising costs, increased environmental obligations, and growing pressure on essential resources. Maximizing efficiency has never been more critical. By focusing on three important and powerful levers, it's possible to work towards maximizing efficiency on the course. Put simply, it is three R's: to record, to review, to reduce. So by maintaining accurate records, strategic record keeping allows course managers the opportunity to review what they're doing. And this offers a critical examination of the in-play areas on a golf course. And this in turn can be used to implement strategies that can therefore reduce. So what do we mean by reduce? Well, one of the key pillars at Germinal is performance and sustainability through innovation. Environmental sustainability. So from that viewpoint, it's about reducing harmful inputs to the environment, whilst at the same time creating a more resilient golf course. Now, record keeping, and I really want to emphasize this, it can be as simple or as complex as you wish it to be. But record keeping is the foundation of sustainable course management. Equally important, though, is having a clear understanding from the outset as to what we're looking to achieve. When we track our inputs, what we apply, where we apply it, how frequently, and for what reason, we begin to see patterns, offering insights into potential efficiencies or opportunities for improvement. And in the context of today's webinar, that is increasing sustainability and reducing inputs. Now, this is nothing new. Greenkeepers have been collecting much of this data for years, such as daily temperature and rainfall measurements, which I had to do as a young greenkeeper many, many years ago. And it was interesting that that insight, I was able to relate that to what I was seeing on the golf course on a daily basis. But much of it also is now mandated, such as fertilizer and nitrogen use, the use of plant protection applications, so herbicides, insecticides, fungicides. But effectively, the more information we can collect and assess, it offers us a clearer picture of what we're working with and trying to achieve. So let's say, for example, if we're looking to reduce mowing or fungicide applications, we must first consider what the purpose and intention is for that particular input. Now, that sounds a little bit silly in the sense of we're mowing grass. But what standards are we looking to achieve or maintain? What expectations, limitations, or impediments are in place towards reaching those standards? What outside influences are there? And what resources have we got available? Taking that bigger picture view whilst setting sustainability goals gives a clearer understanding of what needs to be recorded and what is relevant when reviewing that. Now, there are many tools and apps that can now collect and assemble vast quantities of data into relatable and meaningful information. But positive results can be achieved by collecting whatever desired information consistently, and it's consistently over time, and assembling it in a relatable way, be that a simple spreadsheet, charts, or even pen to paper. Maintaining, for example, a consistent photo library on your phone can record patterns of high stress locations, such as desire lines and foot traffic during drought periods. These areas can then be targeted with localized inputs, such as aeration and overseeding with better drought-tolerant grass species to mitigate that issue in the future years, thus raising resilience in that location. So if we can relate our physical inputs and convert it into data, once that data becomes visible, it becomes manageable. And when it's manageable, it can be optimized. So good, consistent record keeping is the key foundation to sustainable course management. Now, it's not enough to collect that data and that information. We must interpret it and use it to inform future decision-making. Now, data-driven decision-making allows greenkeepers the insight to change and reduce inputs without compromising playing quality. It offers in black and white the ability to compare and contrast incremental changes in inputs, and with a drive towards sustainability and sustainable strategies on the golf course will highlight tangible improvements. As data sets grow over time and merge into one another, that's where useful long-term insights can be realized. Reviewing maintenance hours per surface area or per surface, machine hours, and fertilizer logs often highlights areas of excessive inputs. The other great thing about recording and collecting all this information is that it offers an informed chronicle when communicating and reporting to committees of golf course owners. So what do we mean by reduce? From a sustainability and environmental position, it's about reducing our dependence on fungicides, insecticides, and herbicides, reducing the dependency on water, on nitrogen, reducing our carbon footprint. With regards to labour, it's about reallocating that valuable resource into activities that will support more sustainable strategies and inputs. Labour is the largest single cost on almost every golf course. In a recent study, it was found that by reducing maintained playing surface by even 10% can save between 6 to 12% of total maintenance cost, largely through reduced mowing and machine hours. Now, many clubs overspend simply because they maintain too much turf or maintain it too often. And I understand there is a fine balance to be attained when we speak of reducing in-play surface area. Speed of play, increased wear due to reduced walk-on, walk-off access are issues and concerns. But no one is better qualified to assess that fine balance than you as course managers. And particularly if it's reviewed on a regular basis, it can lead to meaningful improvements. Shifting from fixed schedules to condition-based scheduling can deliver large savings with no real impact on playing quality. Now, my colleague Alex Beesley is going to speak in greater depth about carefully selecting grass species and modern cultivars for resilient turf swards around the golf course, thus reducing the long-term dependency on fungicides, water, and nitrogen use. Agronomic inputs, such as fertilizers, chemicals, and top dressing, are rising sharply in price and facing increasing restrictions. Therefore, seeding or overseeding with wisely chosen grass species of the newest cultivars helps course managers to produce turf swards more resilient to drought conditions, more resistant to disease pressures. With regards to overseeding into established swards, Alex has a persuasive case study to tell, having worked alongside and advised one of his course managers for a number of years, and the results are compelling. Now, the real power of sustainability comes when these strategies are combined. Take, for example, just reducing mown turf area. This not just reduces mowing, it reduces fuel usage. It reduces machine wear, which increases machine life expectancy and reduces capital expenditure. Financially, the benefits are substantial. For most clubs, course maintenance is the single largest expenditure category. Saving even 5 to 10% annually can reinvest thousands back into the course. By investing in green initiatives, such as solar panels and battery-powered equipment, the benefits can be compounded. Sustainable strategies also reduce operational volatility. Course managers gain control. Better record keeping informs where you can meaningfully reduce inputs. Each step supports the next, leading to cumulative savings. Environmental benefits are equally powerful. Reduced inputs such as mowing lower CO2 emissions. Strengthening swards reduces dependence on herbicides, fungicides, insecticides. Reducing irrigation saves water and energy. Naturalized rough or converting bunkers to naturalized grass hazards become habitats for wildlife and biodiversity. Seeding or overseeding with the correct grass species and modern cultivars ensures the most resilient turf sward for that location. Speaking of resilient turf, this is an area that Alex is going to speak in greater depth on. So I'd like to thank you all for your time and hand you back to Doug.
Thank you very much, Graham. Graham, I believe we have a couple of questions in, if we're happy to go ahead with those.
Yep.
So first question in, what specific data points should courses prioritize when starting a record-keeping system?
What I would recommend, and it very much depends on when it was last done or the degree of confidence that a course manager has, is effectively in the confidence that they would have in the turf area that they're working with, and
Okay.
that those measurements are correct. So, particularly, most of a young modern day course, will have been built, with GPS accuracy. But there will be many older courses that don't have that accuracy there. And I would say to a course manager, if they are unsure of, what, you know, areas of measurement their in-place surfaces are, I would recommend in the first instance, um, um, collating that information and being confident that they have the correct measurements there. And that, I suppose, informs future inputs then down the line after that. Um, Secondly to that, that's where I would go in the first instance.
Lovely, thank you. We've got another question in. What quick wins would you recommend for a course just starting in its sustainability journey?
Well, I suppose looking at, I suppose, labor inputs in the first instance and trying to reallocate them. And probably the quickest win in that regard is reduced mown surface area. And I would suggest probably working from the outside in. So looking at, areas of, naturalized, areas that could be naturalized, increasing the area of rough that's being managed, and starting in that regard, so yeah. But as I said, there's a fine balance between, narrowing a golf course or reducing in play surface areas. So that would be the first area I would look at, reducing labor inputs. Secondly, it would be analyzing, I suppose, fertilizer applications and what fertilizers are being used, how they're being used, and see if there are see what alternatives are there that can offer um, um, cost savings, and increased benefits there with regards to fertilizer applications. I suppose on the fertilizer front as well, regular soil testing is something that is going to inform,
Yes.
in the first instance, what base you're working with, and can inform decisions then around fertilizer applications after that.
Lovely. And one final question for yourself, Graham. Are there any tools or software platforms that you would recommend for efficient record keeping?
So yeah, so that's going down the technical side of the industry. I kind of deliberately left that to the side, so to speak, and wanted to more so concentrate on physical inputs, daily physical inputs
Yeah.
that people are making. I don't have a specific software package that I would recommend, but certainly, if a course manager has the funds and the ability to bring something like that on board into their equation, they will be a fantastically powerful tool for them. It's not 100% necessary, but absolutely. And to that end, what I would say would be to look at the market, to get those companies in and find out what they're offering, what they can do, um, but have a clear understanding as what you're looking to achieve, and decide from there. So
Excellent. Thank you very much, Graham. Appreciate that. Thank you.
thanks, Doug.
Now I'd like to hand over to Alex Beasley, who will talk about environmental pressures on golf courses and grass seed selection benefits. Alex, over to yourself.
Thank you, everybody. Pleasure to be able to talk to you today. My name is Alex Beasley, and I'm the Amenity Technical Sales Representative for Germinal GB, covering the West Midlands, South Midlands, South Wales, and the South West. So today I would like to talk to you about appropriate grass selection, covering the different areas of a golf course, and then sustainable strategies in particular for proactive seeding on golf greens. And I have an interesting case study to finish off with. So if we look at grass selection, here we have all the main important areas of the golf course and some examples of pressures, environmental pressures that each area is put under on a yearly basis. So if we start off with the most important area of a golf course, the greens, the main environmental pressures for golf greens in the UK stem from the fact that greens in the UK are dominated by POA. And POA is the weakest species of any grass on a golf green because it's hungry, it's thirsty, and it's shallow rooted. And because of these weaknesses, it will lead to thin sward density, wear pressures, particularly on your first quarter and your exit points of a golf green. Disease pressures, and there's a classic example in the image that you can see here of Fusarium. But in the peaks and months of July and August, you can also be subjected to anthracnose. And in more recent years, dollar spot, which has become problematic. Now, with regards to sustainability, POA is a problem when it comes to sustainability because POA requires high levels of inputs and high levels of maintenance to remain healthy. And those degrees of inputs involved high levels of nitrogen, which typically will be 130 to 140 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare per year. It also requires high volumes of water during the hot summer months, and we've seen very hot summer months in the most recent times. It also requires high tonnage of straight sand or 70-30 top dressing to maintain the strength of the sward of the crown following aeration cultural practices. And also because it is very weak in terms of being attacked by diseases, it requires high applications of fungicide, which most certainly is not sustainable long term. So with reference to appropriate grass seed selection, the go-to options we always refer to are bents. So that can be brown top bent and creeping bent. Now, Germinal is unique in the seed industry whereby we are the only seed supplier that actually has brown top bent that have UK provenance to that, and namely Aber Royal that comes from Wales, very fine leaf, high shoot density, excellent disease resistance, and has a natural trait of wanting to tiller out and dominate POA on golf greens. We also have Aber Regal that comes from the South Downs, fine leafed again, very hardy, and an exceptionally high resistance to fusarium and high shoot density and wear coverage. In terms of creeping bents, we have 4 creeping bents. We launched 2 of those creeping bents at BTME in January this year. The new creeping bents is 777, which is a development from our original 007 creeping bent. And we also launched Piper. Now, 777 is number 1 on the BSB list, a mean average of 6.9. Piper, as a new cultivar into the UK, has a mean average of 7.7. So we're absolutely topping out in terms of the performance of those creeping bents. 007 is a super creeping bent, originated from 24 parent plant cultivars with resistance to temperature variance of extreme heat and drought to extreme cold, excellent disease resistance, very, very drought tolerant. So within the bents, what you're achieving is an increase of wear tolerance. They will outcompete POA, a higher shoot density, excellent drought resistance tolerances, and more critically, from a sustainability point of view, lower input requirements. I'll talk a little bit more about that when I refer to proactive seeding. And extremely importantly, high disease resistance. Now, of course, there are many different types of golf courses, from parkland to heathland to downland to links. And of course, it's appropriate to select and investigate what works best for your course. And that can be of straight blends or blends of multiple different cultivars, from brown top to creeping bent. Example is Fortham Greens, which is 60% brown top bent, 40% creeping bent. But it may well be, if you're a links or a downland course, you may naturally have fescues occurring in your greens, but you need to supplement those with some bent. Good example of A11. which is 80% fescues split equally between slender creeping red fescue and chewings, 40% each, and then 20% of the two brown top bents I mentioned. But that will give you that blend of diversity to improve your greens. So moving on to teas. So teas are constantly under pressure, particularly if they're small, compact tee box areas. Your tee box rotation is limited. So it'll come under tremendous high foot traffic, wear pressures, divots, particularly on par threes and strategic par fours. And the requirement for quick recovery is always in demand. But also typically, very much so on parkland courses, shade can be a big issue as well, leading to thin sward density. So your appropriate grass selections for tees, if you're looking for quick recovery, you'll be looking at ultrafine perennial dwarf grasses every single time, because they are quick to establish, they are very hard wearing, they provide high shoot density and excellent strong root network. An example of that would be A5, our ultrafine perennial dwarf rye mix, contains Cabrio, 25%. It contains 25% Gwynnet and 50% Corsica. Cabrio, an important cultivar that sat at number one for well over 10, 11 years on the Beesley list with an 8.5 finest of leaf, so extremely fine leafed ryegrass, hence the ultrafine terminology to that, but also very hard wearing, very fast establishing, and strong rooting. Now, of course, depending on, I mentioned about those different types of courses, from parkland to heathland to hybrid courses to downland and links. And of course, if it's more natural for the finish, the short sward density, it may be appropriate for looking at fescues, because fescues will give you good wear resistance. They'll give you high shoot density, tolerating of close mowing, and drought resistance. And an example where you can create a blend with the diversity of fescues and bringing in a little bit of ryegrass. So, because ryegrass will always germinate twice as quick as a fescue. If you've got above 16 degrees soil temperature, we're typically looking at 4 to 5 days stage one leaf germination with the ryegrass. Whereas with fescues, slender, chewing, strong, you're looking at 10 to 12 days at the same temperature. So a blend of a ryegrass and a fescue is very beneficial because you're getting all those strengths and traits. I mean, A10 is a blend of slender creeping red fescue with ryegrass, a little bit of chewings, a little bit of smooth stalk meadowgrass and brown top bent. But you could opt for, if you're wanting a very high quality, fineness of leaf, A28 could be an option whereby you've got 45% slender creeping red fescue. You've got 30% chewings, which is Cabernet, which we have, which is number one on the BSB list, and 25% that ultrafine perennial ryegrass Cabrio that I mentioned. But that will give you a versatile golf mix, tolerating that close mowing, hard wearing, but then the fast germination from the ryegrass that naturally blends in with the fescues. With regards to shade problems, a particular mix that we have specifically for shade tolerance is A31, and that is 85% smooth stalk meadowgrass and 15% Poa sapina. Poa sapina originates from the Bavarian Alps, where for 6 months of the year it's cold, it's damp, it's shady, but it will persist in those conditions. And so that particular blend is very specifically designed for recovery from tee boxes with pressurized shade. It will give you a dense sward coverage, hard wear tolerances. Smooth stalk meadowgrass has got excellent recovery tolerances to it and very good color to it. But it is important to note that with smooth stalk meadowgrass, you need a minimum of 12 degrees soil temperature for germination to start. And even if you had optimum soil temperatures of above 16, 18 degrees, it will still take 21 days for that germination to start through. So we always advise with a shade tolerant mix, the overseeding period is between April and early September to maintain those soil temperatures. So fairways, moving on to fairways, a classic scene that we've seen in recent years. So fairways are under a lot of pressure from wear, divoting, native coarse grasses, depending on the origins of where the course was built, that can cause a poor finish. And then you can also have compact areas where golfers are consistently walking on one side of a fairway, thinning out the sward, but also lowering the sward density, but creating compaction. And a good practice within that situation, certainly with drought situations, is regular slitting of those compacted areas and then increasing overseeding, increasing the height slightly to take that pressure off, and even trying to direct, if possible, golfers from those areas and increasing the cut-off height, and that will improve those areas. So in terms of fairway grasses, I've mentioned two key ones already that tick the box for quick recovery. Ryegrasses. Even I have heathland courses and downland courses that will still use, for example, A5 on their fairways, because if they've suffered from wear tolerances and in particular drought tolerances in recent times, if the fescues have died back because of extreme over 30 degrees heat, then the ryegrasses will come back more quickly from a recovery point of view. If you are suffering from extreme drought conditions, an all fescue mix with strong, with slender chewings, but very critically a hard fescue, so A34, for example, that we have that has 35% hard fescue within there, that provides good recovery but excellent drought tolerances going forward for future years. But in essence, you're looking for an ideal blend, which is why it's appropriate to assess different mixes from ryegrasses to ryegrass and fescue blends. But you're looking for quick establishment, good recovery from divots, wear resistance, low maintenance inputs requirements going forward, a good clean cut, and drought resistance. And that blend of fescues and ryegrasses will provide that to you going forward. Leading on to rough areas, sometimes a neglected area, because you can find that rough areas actually have too much ryegrass in them, and then the base of the sward is too dense, which is why it leads to golfers losing their golf balls more frequently and more problematic. I mean, obviously, a rough area is there to define the outer reaches of the golf course, create a challenge for the golfers from semi-rough to first cut, second cut, etc. But actually, you want to frame your golf course in a natural way. And in each case, a fescue orientated mix for fescues will be an excellent option for you, particularly, for example, in ecological mix like A32, where it has strong fescue, it has cat's tail, crested dog's tail in there, and a little bit of brown top bent. So you get that natural wispy looking fescue, thinner at the base. So it still creates a challenge, but golfers can find their balls more easily. But you get that lovely feathering at the tops of the fescue heads, and it frames it. So that's always a very good option for when it comes from sheep's fescue, strong, chewings, brown top bent, crested dog's tail, cat's tail, for example. Just before I move on to proactive seeding, just one other thing, as an additional note, Germinal is actually instigating trials with one of our unique cultivars, double root. It's called Everlasting. It's actually unique within the industry. It took 20 years to develop through our R&D team at Germinal Horizon Aberystwyth. And it's a cross-pollinated cultivar of a white clover and Caucasian clover, exceptionally deep rooted. It captures nitrous oxide from the atmosphere, brings it into the nodules within the root network, and then it self-feeds itself and the accompanying grasses and swards between 5 and 20 grams per meter squared of clean nitrogen. Now, that is a sustainable option. And we are looking at, for golf courses, through trials, and it will take some time to look at the development of this for tees and potential fairways with small percentages of the everlasting clover to provide sustainable feeding for tees, for fairways. It's only a few individual clovers supplementing within the fescues and the ryegrasses mixes, but we're doing trials at the moment. So it'll be interesting information, which going forward, we'd be very excited to provide information on that going forward. But it's just to give you a little anecdotal bit of additional information of what we are doing behind the scenes. So, um, I'd now like to talk to you about proactive seeding. So, what is proactive seeding? But in essence, it's overseeding, but we like to call it at Germinal proactive seeding because what it means is you are proactively putting stronger cultivars into your greens to improve the performance, quality, and long-term sustainability of your greens and improve those performances and the surfaces of trueness and evenness. And to start that process, it is very appropriate to look at and choose the right appropriate grasses and cultivars and different species and experiment with different mixes to increase the genetic diversity overall for the performance. And probably the best example I can give you is Fortham Greens. So Fortham Greens is a blend. It's a blend of brown top bent and creeping bent. And I've mentioned some of those cultivars already. So it's 40% musket, brown top bent, which we grow in New Zealand, high shoot density, very high wear tolerance, excellent disease resistance, but it has a unique trait of a fast spring green up because of the way it was developed. We then have 10% Aber Royal and 10% Aber Regal with that fineness of leaf, wear resistance and high resistance to fusarium. So there is your 60% of your brown top bent. What you then have is 15% Piper, our new creeping bent that we launched at BTME, and we have 15% Tour Pro GDE, which was number one last year on the STRI list, and 10% of the world-renowned Super Creeping Bent 007. So you have 6 cultivars there. It was only about 3, 4 years ago, there was only 4 cultivars in there. So increasing the diversity of the extra cultivars with their own individual strengths and traits from disease resistance, wear tolerances, shoot density, then you are getting a more genetically diverse blend to help bring forward the performance, but long-term sustainability on your greens. Because if you increase your shoot density and sward coverage, you can lower your requirements for top dressing. If you increase your drought tolerances from those diversities of cultivars, you can be lowering your water usage. With the development of the disease resistance natural traits within those bents that and creeping bents that I've mentioned, with high fusarium resistance, high anthracnose resistance, dollar spot, brown patch, and snow mold, in particular with 007, that's more in the Scandinavian countries, to be fair, then you are lowering your requirements for using fungicides. And also, more critically, I mentioned earlier on before, POA wants 130, 140 kilograms per nitrogen per year. Bents are happy at between 40 and typically 95 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare. So your inputs are lower. So overall, you are being more sustainable. You are increasing the performance and quality of your green surfaces. You're lowering your inputs, which saves you costs on your bottom line, and you're improving your sustainability long term. And I think the best way to finish off explaining that is a case study that I mentioned. So I started working with a golf course in the West Midlands back in 2019. And historically, they hadn't done a regular overseed for more than 8 years. And there was thin sward issues, wear tolerances, and outbreaks of fusarium on a regular basis. And I sat down with the course manager and we talked about what wasn't working well, what was working well. And we started off on an proactive overseeding program with Aber Majesty. But prior to that overseeding process, we discussed the previous inputs on the greens at this course. And here are some examples. So they were using 140 tons worth of straight kiln sand, 140 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare, and very critically, 12 applications of fungicide a year, almost one a month. And that's not sustainable long term. So we started off a proactive seeding process in 2019, carrying that through 2020 and 21. On the advice of their agronomist, they recommended getting some creeping bent in, so we transitioned to that Fortham Greens mix that I referred to. And then we sat down And we're only 18 months into a proactive seeding process. And any proactive seeding process is not a 1 or a 2 year season. It's a 3, 4, 5, 6 year process to outcompete the POA. But after 18 months of multiple overseeding, the inputs were reduced down to 95 tons on average per year of sand, 105 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare per year, and down to critically 3 applications of fungicide a year. And when we sat down and I spoke to the course manager and I said, what has that done to your bottom line? He said, you've saved me £6,000 a year in those costs. So he was able to then reutilize those costs from additional overseeding and other areas of his course management of his course. And that end result was higher shoot density, higher sward coverage, better wear tolerances, higher disease resistance, lower inputs, therefore greater sustainability going forward. So that's covered everything I would like to talk about today. So thank you for your time on that. I'll stop sharing the screen and I'll refer back to Doug and see if there's any questions.
Thank you very much, Alex. Yes, we do. We have some questions in for you. So, first question, which grass species are proving most resilient to climate variability in the UK?
So grass species, I would always highlight bent. They are the most resilient when it comes to disease resistance. They're the most resilient to wear tolerances and deep rooting because the network of rooting from bents, particularly creeping bents, is very deep, so it finds moisture further down in the profile. So if I was ever asked the question, where am I going to get my best results from and performance and long-term sustainability, as referring to the inputs I refer to, I would always be recommending brown top and creeping bents either as a straight or more appropriately as a blend. Every single golf course is different, different organic matter levels, different pH levels. So each course can't be having an umbrella of one box fits all. You need to basically identify the current conditions of each individual course and appropriately select the appropriate species and the appropriate cultivars within those species within a blend to get the best performance. But overall, I would always recommend bent.
Okay, great, thank you. Also, what's the best overseeding machine to use?
Okay, yeah, I get asked that question a lot. It's an open question, and there's not one straight correct answer. So I look after around 120 golf courses in my area. I would say 40% use disc seeding, be it a Vidro or a Charterhouse. 40% will use dimple seeding or dyno seeders, or a sorrel roll effect. And then 20% will do drop spreading following their aeration practices. It really does depend on when you are doing your overseeding. That's an important factor to consider. So if you were just following your spring renovations and your autumn renovations within a proactive overseed, then a disc seeder is extremely effective. And why I say that is because when it's distributing the seed, every grain of seed is going into that disc line, and the back roller is then the weight is closing up the disc line. And you're getting 100% of your seed in that disc line, whether it's a single pass or a diamond double pass. So that works exceptionally well in the spring and the autumn. But I have courses that everybody's different. Everybody's got different resources, manpower, and budget. So again, it's different circumstances for different locations. But a lot of courses actually like to go little and often with overseeding and put in a mid-season somewhere between May and July. Now, obviously, your greens are going to be firmer at that time of year. And obviously, if you do, even if it's a light overseed, let's say it's not 6 grams a square meter, but you're going at 3 or 2.5 and 2.5. If you've done a double pass and you've got firm greens, what can happen in the summertime is you can get a ball wobble when it crosses over the diamond points. And golfers don't like that. So um, if you know that you are going to be doing frequent overseeding, what can be effective is dyno seeders because they're less disruptive on the surface. Um, Again, I've got other courses that will actually, again, if you have the means to do this, use ninja tines, fine ninja tines, a very light top dress, and simply drop spread into those ninja tines. Um, I've then got golf courses that, because of budgetary restrictions, they don't have machinery in-house, which is a luxury. And what they'll do is that they will, following a scarification, a verticut, a solid tine, and obviously a top dress first, because with that bent seed, it's 5 mil optimum soil contact depth. If it goes 10, 15 mil and deeper, you've buried that seed because of it only has so much pre-stored energy in the cotyledon of that seed that you want 5 mil optimum soil contact depth. So it can be just as effective if you've got a drop spreader, a walk behind drop spreader, and your seed is hitting the scarification lines, the verticut lines, and the solid tines. You've actually got 3 different apertures of soil contact for that seed to get in. So it's always asked, and there's not
Yeah.
one easy straight answer because every single circumstance is different. And you could use a vari-seeder, etc. So it's
Yeah.
what's right for that particular course based on their overseeding program, how many times they go a year, and their resources. But it's always an
Perfect.
interesting question.
Yeah. As you say, many different answers on that one. Yeah, I agree. Final question for yourself.
Okay,
How
great.
should course managers approach transitioning to more sustainable grass species without disrupting play?
Okay, so basically, I've mentioned proactive overseeding is not a one season hit. It's a 3, a 4, a 5, a 6 year process minimum. If you're starting off at 80% power and you've just got some native bents and fescues in there, that transitional period is over numerous seasons. But of course, if a course manager wants to improve the performance of the greens and be more sustainable long term because of all the pressures I've mentioned, but they don't want to disrupt play. I've mentioned a moment ago a couple of means is that, and of course it's always subjective to disrupting play of the members and the societies and the corporate days and the visitors. If you have a scheduled spring window and an autumn window, it can be conveyed to the members that for the next week, 2 weeks, there will be some degree of disturbance to the surface. And therefore, you've got the flexibility to go in and do your overseeding for that long-term improvement of performance. So after 3 days worth of aeration and top dressing, then you get your overseed in, March, April, likewise back end of August, September, early October. The window, I mean, I'm also asked the question about cold seeding. Technically, so long as there's not snow and frost on the ground, you can actually put seed in the ground at any point of the year.
Yeah.
Obviously, during November to early February, it's cold active. It's waiting for the temperature to rise up. But the other method that you can do mid-season, if you do need to get some recovery back, an aqua seeder for recovering scar areas is very effective indeed because it's just targeting that scar area with an aqua seeder with the bent seeds going in, or that I mentioned before, ninja tines with a light top dress and a light overseed and then a roll. The golfers don't know it's happened. So
Yeah.
there are means and ways throughout the season to get that overseeding done. But also the one critical thing I would say, and I mentioned about the soil contact seeding depth of 5 mil, is that in spring and in autumn, in spring, you're coming gradually down from your winter cutter height, and in the autumn, you're going back up to your winter cutter height. So, let's say your summer cutter height's between 3 and 5, your winter cutter height's between 5 and 5 mil. But the first 2 or 3 cuts after an overseed, you want to raise the cut-off height by 1 mil to take the stress off those new seedlings at stage 1 leaf and stage 2 leaf germination. So when you're doing, say, a mid-season, you just need to factor that in, that really to get the return on the investment of your bents, is that you need to factor in that you might just need to raise the cutter height by 1 mil just to take off that pressure, but you need to factor that in those months of May, June, or July. So it's again looking at the fixture list, looking at what's in the diaries, etc. But yes, so those are sort of the windows and the means that you can do at those points in time. But again, one of the things I'm always asked is how much spent seed should be put down. And what we
Yes.
say is, from a proactive overseeding point of view at Germinal, is that if you can get a minimum of 100 kilograms of bent seed into your greens a year, that is the tipping point where the ratio of bent seed going into your greens will start dominating that competing power. Obviously, it'd be wonderful to go higher than that, 150, if you have the luxury of 180 and beyond, but that's down to budget and resource and means and times. But if you can, that spring and autumn, if you think of 5 grams a square meter for a hectare is 50 kilograms. Same
Yep.
likewise for your autumn, that's ticking that 100 kilograms. If you can squeeze another overseeding at some point, or likewise, if you can go at 6 grams a square meter, that's 120. And you're just going in that ratio of increasing and dominating and outcompeting the power. So yeah, that's another, just throw that in with a mix.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you both, Graham and Alex, two very insightful, well put together presentations. If any more questions do happen to come in, we will endeavour to answer them for you. I would like to say thank you for your time. We hope you've enjoyed today's session and you found it useful. Like any further advice, don't hesitate to get in touch. You can find our contact details on our website, germinalamenity.com. You can also explore our knowledge hub for a range of helpful guides and management tips. And finally, thank you for listening.